Good morning, fellow members of First Lutheran. I'm Bruce Peterson. I serve on your council as Generosity Chairman. I want to discuss with you today this year's Generosity campaign, which begins this week. Be on the lookout for a special Generosity e-news on Tuesday, and there'll be a letter coming by mail later this week. Last year I delivered a message with our theme of sustaining hope for a virtual present and a vital future. As I sat down to write this year's message, I couldn't help but think of a saying by our eminent American philosopher, Lawrence Peter Berra. You may know him as Yogi Berra, who, in observing some events, said, well, it's deja vu all over again. Well, moving into our third year of the pandemic and now being attacked by another variant, it really does seem like deja vu all over again. Yogi offered another cogent piece of advice. The future ain't what it used to be. Now, I think, 2 years, even 1 year ago, we didn't expect to experience today what we're experiencing. Our future is not what we expected it to be. But Yogi gave a more positive piece of advice. When you get to a fork in the road, take it. Fellow members of First Lutheran, we are at that fork. We've tried to do our best to keep our ministries going given the constraints we've been under over the last couple of years. I think we're all realizing that COVID is going to be with us a long time, and we've got to learn to live with it. So at this fork, we can either keep our heads down, stand pat, or we can move on. Friends, it feels to me like it's time to take the fork called move on. What is in the fork that we need to take? It's a fork that re-energizes Christian education of our youth, which, like all education, has suffered the past couple of years. Joining us this week is Kat Mercer, who is going to be a great help with our faith formation activities and especially with our youth. It's a fork that renews our pastoral connections with those who are homebound, sick, and in the last stages of life. And a fork that refreshes our presence with one another in Christian fellowship. The opportunity to be better connected to our church friends. On a personal note, I very much miss coffee and Cornerstone. It's a fork that reopens our church facilities to those groups who had come to count on our generosity for meeting space, and which introduces First Lutheran to many new people. And finally, it gives us the opportunity to add important meeting space in the form of picnic shelter, usable by both church members and our groups, probably 9 to 10 months of the year. We may not be able to accomplish all of this in weeks or even a few months, but with faith and perseverance, we'll get there. Pastor Jay, other members of the council, and I feel that God is calling us to move forward in faith. Taking the move on fork will necessitate increase our current level of giving, which is now about $150,000 below what it was 2 years ago. We are asking the congregation to recover part of that amount by asking for an increase of $125,000 in giving above current levels. That's about $2,400 a week. The needs include making up giving that's been lost to deaths or to people moving away from Greensboro or otherwise leaving the church. Part-time pastoral help to be sure that pastoral care, visitations, and worship needs are met. Staff support for community ministry, new member support, generosity support. Adding to the already committed funding to assure completion of the picnic shelter. And finally, while it is true that our church, being closed to many activities, reduced our expenses somewhat, the fact remains that First Lutheran, like all other churches, for all other churches, means that our expenses are more of the fixed variety than the variable. They continue to be incurred whether people are in the building or not. Finally, our spending plan must accommodate inflation, which I'm sure you're all aware is eating at all of our budgets. I hope in carrying out your plans for the year, you will prayerfully consider the needs of our church and our mission together in Christ's service. I hope you'll be generous in your giving. The promise of a better time is before us. Allow me to conclude with one last piece of sage advice from Yogi Berra. If you don't know where you're going, you'll end up someplace else. Folks, we know where we're going. Let's take the fork that allows us to step forward in faith and gives us hope for the future. Thank you.